All right. Thank you so much for joining us today for our CTA, all-female CTA panel. So we're going to talk a bit about, what we are doing, what our journey was, and how we hope to help you all. But let's start with introducing ourselves. So we'll start at the top. Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Shepard. I am a Salesforce certified technical architect, 32 times certified. The Boston Architect User Group leader. I'm a Ladies Be Architects, MuleSoft, and Well-Architected Ambassador. The founder and admin of Architect Ohana Slack. Founder of a program called Scale Up Arcs, which I'll talk about more later. Let's see, what else? That covers that. Oh, I'm also the organizer for Northeast Dreamin' and Architect Dreamin', also co-founder of Architect Dreamin'.
You know you're doing a lot if you have to have a cheat sheet for this.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we also have Emely.
Hi, everyone. And Melissa should have gone last because she makes us all look bad.
Note for next time, yes.
So, Emely Patra, I currently head the Salesforce practice for Publicis Sapient. And this is a new job, 3 months in. I was at Salesforce before this. I'm a CTA as well. And unlike Melissa, I'm not going to rattle up all the groups, but...
Not yet.
Not yet. But one thing I'm really proud of is starting the Women Who Mule program in EMEA, because when I took up the MuleSoft job...
Which now I'm a part of the Women Who Mule.
Exactly. So I was a co-founder for that, and of course, of the Women's Network at Salesforce when I was there, etc. So I'm very, very glad to be here, and wow, what company I have here.
Well, and talking about the company, so Miriam, you're part of this company.
I am. I'm actually proud to be a part of this company. I became a CTA in September, so I'm the youngest CTA here, probably not in actual years. So Salesforce CTA, I work at Salesforce as a senior director. Happy to have my manager here as well, shout out. And I have been a solution architect for over 20 years. I love to give back to the community. I love to attend community events. And I live in Haarlem, so I'm from the Netherlands. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And it's really true. She schlepped her ass over to, sorry, that was probably not the best way to put it, but she traveled all the way to Brussels last week just to give a session to, other aspiring architects. So to say that she gives back is, yeah.
And I showed up there. I showed up too.
Yes, and I was a private chauffeur, so
Yeah. She got me from the train station.
Across the pond.
Yes. So, and then that leaves me. So I'm Lilith van Biesen. I'm also a CTA. That's kind of a common denominator here. I also became an MVP this year, and of course I work too outside of the community engagement, which is as a principal architect at Capgemini. And then my main home passion, let's say, is being an amateur zookeeper for 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 1 husband, who is watching the live stream. So, hi, honey. So, let's start off with some questions. So we have a few questions. We'll go around in the panel and kind of think about what we did. And this one, I'll take the first stab at, let's say. So what did you want to become when you were little? It wasn't CTA. I didn't know what CTA was. I didn't really know what IT was. It just seemed like, very black boxy. So when I was young, I wanted to become a doctor until I found out that, you have to study and blood and mathematics and all of these kind of things that weren't really, up my alley. So I tried to explore a few things until at some point I really wanted to create something. And I got in touch with Salesforce and Trailhead, and that kind of really spearheaded everything for me. It just clicked like, oh, this is so awesome. I can create stuff. And it kind of evolved from, okay, I can create stuff, to how can I make sure that this stuff is going to remain useful? How do I make sure it's scalable? And naturally, you kind of go into that architect track. So that was how I came into this. And it's not at all the, yes, this is the one way, and I found it kind of story. What did you want to become when you were little?
I haven't thought about this for a while, but thinking back, I always wanted to be an inventor. I liked building things. I liked coming up with ideas. So that actually kind of translates to being an architect. And also, I'm always coming up with ideas and roping in other people to help. It's Lilith and Miriam now, and soon to be Emely. So yeah, I guess that was what I wanted to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I can add my little piece, because in the Netherlands, when you're about in eighth grade, I don't know what that translates to, but when you're about 10, you need to take a test, an aptitude test. And one of the questions on the test was, what do you want to become when you're bigger? But you had to draw it. And I'm a very bad drawer. So for the rest of my kind of stint at that school, I was known as a person who wanted to become a bus driver. Because I knew how to draw a bus.
You know, when I was little, I didn't have a specific career in mind, but I knew exactly what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do what Lilith wanted to do. I didn't want to be a doctor. Because I just couldn't think of, oh my God, I have to deal with blood and sick people all day. That's just not me. But what fascinated me was problem solving. So I always knew that whatever I wanted to do had to be a problem solving job of some sort. And I had to get a good corner office, which I still haven't got, by the way. So I'm still working towards that. But yeah, that was kind of my ambition when I was little.
And then we all became architects and CTAs at some point, but let's talk a bit about how we got there. So Miriam, you want to take this one?
Yes, and if you hit the start, don't be like, oh my God, that's going to be a long story. But I do want to start with my childhood.
Bus driver.
Yeah, no. But so in the Netherlands, every child needs to learn how to swim at a very early age, because we have a lot of water, right? And so this kind of translates to every kid having to take at least 1 or 2 diplomas in learning how to swim. So when I kind of started on the path of learning how to swim, I didn't stop until I reached the final level, which was open air rescue swimming 3. So that just gives you a kind of idea of the type of mindset and the type of personality, right? So I actually already knew before I joined Salesforce and before I joined the Salesforce ecosystem, I knew that one day I wanted to be a CTA. So then I started getting badges and I started working on it, and I realized that a lot of the things that I had been doing before, business requirements analysis, process mapping, you name it, were actually useful skills. So this was not just something that I was doing in a vacuum, but everything that I had learned before was helping me on this journey. So now when people ask me, I'm like, I think I've always been an architect. I just didn't know it.
I can go next. So I didn't know what a CTA was till the day I joined Salesforce, because I came from the Oracle ecosystem. So the first day I went into office, I was already wowed by the Salesforce London Tower, and then people kind of pointed out to 2 people who were walking across the floor pretty far away and said, they are CTAs. And I said, what's a CTA? They looked at me, said, certified technical architect, like the highest pyramid of whatever certified you could get, and they're gods, essentially, Salesforce gods, right? I looked at them and said, great, okay. So over time, obviously, they were colleagues, and I got to know them, and what I realized that the credibility that they brought to the table, the knowledge that they brought, and I was already an enterprise architect, but I didn't have that credibility in the Salesforce world that they did. So I knew that instantly, that's something I want. I wanted that credibility. I wanted that gravitas when I walk into a customer meeting, for them to trust me and for me to know what I'm talking about. But like Miriam, because I was an architect already, and I knew I was an architect, it was a matter of translating my transferable skills to the Salesforce world, learn the technical stack underneath, and then go for it. So that's how I approached it.
I guess I'll go next. So I'll go back to college. So I went to college for mathematics and computer science, so I was in IT very early. I was always really good at math, and some of you know this probably from reading my story that I put out there on my blog. And in 2006, I ended up working in an IT department, got introduced to Salesforce. I was doing my MBA in information systems, so I was learning about systems integration, and I got to build integration middleware, and I really thought it was such a cool thing. I went from software development to working in IT, working on business systems. So that really introduced me to enterprise architecture. So I ended up working for an integration middleware company, and then and went on to do contracting and decided to start my own partner in 2016. Well, I already had the company, but became a partner in 2016. And I thought, okay, well, I want to keep following the architect path. How can I gain credibility as an architect, as a partner in the ecosystem? So thought I should go for CTA. I've always really liked doing architecture and design. I was even doing things back in early 2000 with enterprise architects, like using things like load runner and performance, and I was building network monitoring software. So I was always kind of in that architecture space. So did my first certification in 2016, Platform Developer 1, and then 2018 did all my prereqs, and then just kept following it. Met Gemma from Ladies Be Architects, who isn't here. She was going to be here, but had a little bit of a snafu, so really sad she can't make it, but she's always been one of my biggest inspirations and cheerleaders and supports, and she put together a study group in 2019 where I met some other people, other female aspiring CTAs, and went on to finally do it in 2021. So it was a little bit of a journey.
Yeah, I think what I really liked is the credibility part. And I think this is also something, especially I didn't come from like a super technical background. I actually studied languages first, and I chose that because it didn't have statistics in its curriculum. So that was a very well thought out plan. But then afterwards, when I did another professional bachelor, which was more technical, you start working, you start diving in, and you start having conversations with people who know so much more than you do. And it's not because somebody knows more about some element that what you know isn't valuable or isn't worth considering. And I think that's one of the pet peeves or the chip on my shoulder, let's say, that I got is, okay, but when I am saying makes sense, I have some gray matter here that I actually know how to use. So for me, becoming also CTA was also validating, and a desperate attempt to get rid of an imposter syndrome that will never ever leave. I think we all still have it. So yeah, it's not the cure for that. But that's kind of what drove me. All right, and then who inspired you on your architect journey?
So there's so many people, but you have to remember when I did my CTA, the pyramid certification did not exist. There was no structured study path to CTA. You kind of had to Google your way in to know what you wanted to know. And I was only the second woman CTA in Europe. So the only one I saw before me was Joanna, who some of you might know of, and she was at Salesforce at that time, and she was incredible. And I think when I saw her, I really thought, okay, there's a woman who passed it, so I've got a chance, But honestly, the inspiration came just not from women. It was all the people I saw and how they, like the credibility that they got, the knowledge, but also the passion that they brought to the job. Just commitment, that kind of commitment to do something and go through a process and pass a certification. It commits you to a standard, and I loved that about Salesforce. Like, you're not ready to settle for substandards. Yeah, I know architecture is not the perfect solution designing, right? It is always about compromises, but then what's the best of the worst that you can get? And that's the whole mindset. So inspiration-wise, I think Joyner, but also all the other senior architects I saw around me. But in general, the community and the ecosystem, and it wasn't this vibrant or this big at that time, but whoever I saw them giving back. And the first thing that I saw about CTAs was the moment they passed, they volunteered to mentor someone else. And then they volunteered to mentor someone else. And they wanted to grow that quality of architects. So I thought, this is great. I had never seen anything like that. And trust me, when I was doing my CTA, I was already in 15 years in this industry. So it's not like I was new to technology. I had been an architect, I had been on projects, but I had never seen or experienced the drive of the ecosystem like Salesforce has. And I think one thing Salesforce has really done well is create this energy, creates the positive giving back culture, which I think is really the USP, the differentiator of this ecosystem. And you all actually share credit for that because it's you who makes it special.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I just want to highlight two names that we've already mentioned. So Doina Papa, if you don't know her, so she's a rock star. She's absolutely amazing. And of course, Gemma Blizzard, even though, not CTA because she hasn't gone for the board, let's call her honorary CTA because, she really paved the way together with like Susanna Plaisted and Charlie Prinsloo with the Ladies Be Architect. I think without that, at least for me, it would have been such a daunting challenge. And of course, I had the pyramid. So you had to go from scratch. I had the pyramid, and still it was very, very daunting to see, okay, especially when you get to the end of it. So I naively thought, okay, so after I've done all these certs, surely the last part is the smallest, right? On a pyramid, it looks the smallest. Yeah.
I felt the same way, till someone told me, oh, you've done 20% of what's needed. Now starts the 80%.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'll jump in because I'll follow on that. So when I did all my prereqs in 2018, the first place I went was Ladies Be Architects. I was actually reading Gemma's blogs to help me pass all the prereq certs. So grateful to her for all of that material. And I had no idea what to do next. It's like, okay, I passed all these certifications. What do I do next? So that's when I reached out to her, and she's like, let me put together a study group. There's some of us that are all going for it. So she created a little WhatsApp group. We started doing mocks. That was my introduction to doing mocks. I actually got to judge a whole bunch of mocks. Matt Morris, who is also here, another inspiration for me. So I got to sit in on like 6 or 7 of his mocks as a judge because I just happened to not be working during the time when he was preparing for his board. And it was just really inspiring to me to see both him and Gemma preparing for their boards. I got to sit in on some of her mocks as a judge too. So I really got to learn what a mock was, how to work through a scenario, how to do the diagrams. Also, shout out to Matt for his diagramming video. I learned how to diagram because of him. The way I do my diagrams, I attribute it to what he taught in that video, all the different colors I used, some of the styles that I have. So, Matt and Gemma were inspirations for me. Doina was also an inspiration for me. She was actually, Carl Brundage was my first kind of mentor, but we didn't get to work together too much. Then Doina came, and I had talked to her at Dreamforce, and we kind of shared similar backgrounds, similar experiences. I was really terrified of presenting, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this, and she said she had that same issue, and so we kind of bonded over that, and she became my mentor through Flow Republic. So I did all my mocks with her, and she gave me all the advice on how to prepare for the board. So I've had a lot of different people inspire me. Little does Lilith know, she inspired me. So I started my CTA study Slack at the end of 2020, and Lilith joined around, I don't know, maybe like March or April. And she just came tearing in with like all this knowledge and she was just doing this and that. And I'm like, wow, look at this girl go. I'm like, well, here's a good example of someone that's just really going for it. I'm like, she's going to pass because she's just got the drive that's just going to keep her going until she makes it happen. So it actually really inspired me to be better and do better and be like, all right, I'm going to do this now. So I started preparing for my evaluation, and then, we ended up doing, got them about a month apart. You went to your board, you did your section retake, and I did my second full board a month after her, and we both passed, within a month of each other. But she was also an inspiration for me.
But that's the funny part, and I think we see it so often, right? I was very inspired by you because I don't think you mentioned this quite enough. She started like a Slack family where I think pretty much all aspiring architects are in right now. Everyone who wants to go for the CTA, there's only one address, and that's hers. So, I mean, that's a funny thing. Like, we get inspired by each other, and you only discover later on, like, whoa, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and something Emily mentioned is that CTAs are people that really are willing to give back, and they dedicate a lot of their time. And this is something that I don't think is highlighted nearly enough in the Trailblazer community, but the CTAs are true trailblazers. They're out there doing thousands of hours of work, mocks, judging other people's mocks while they're studying for their own review boards, which is what we were doing. We were presenting, we were judging, we were running study groups, just really dedicating ourselves. And then once we passed, we wanted to give back. So part of what the Slack group has done is given people a place to go and really be able to give back. And it's really created this culture of how can we help? How can we do more? How can we create more architects? So that's something that I see and I've tapped into and I notice with people who are CTAs is they really do want to give back. So I always find ways for them to do that now.
I think that's the perfect segue to the next topic. I just want to say that everyone who has walked the path with me has been an inspiration, not in the very least the women I'm sharing the stage with. So thank you.
So then, yeah, how are you paying it forward? And I want to give the word again to you because, of course.
Yeah, so for me, I started the Slack group because I failed my first review board. I needed to study. I needed consistency. I needed access to mocks. I needed to work with a group because I just wasn't doing enough with other people to develop my architect mindset and to also overcome my fear of presenting and talking. So that really, it was really for myself. It was really for selfish reasons. But I was just like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take a bunch of people with me for the ride. So I was like, and especially females. I want to help support females. I want to take them along for the ride. And I was just thrilled when females kept joining the group, like Lilith and Dawn and Neha, and just all the females that came and started studying with the group. It was amazing. So I started that group. It's still going. There's lots of CTA study groups going in there. It's not just for CTAs. It's for anyone that's interested in architecture. But as soon as I passed my review board, I said, I got my golden hoodie, and then I got my CTA really a few weeks after. It was kind of back to back. And so I said, I'm going on the Golden Hoodies CTA World Tour, and I'm just going to speak, and I'm just going to teach. Because one of my reasons for doing CTA was that I wanted to be able to teach people, and I wanted to be able to mentor. I didn't really have a clear reason the first time I went to the board, and I think that's also part of why I kind of didn't put forth the effort that I needed to pass, or at least get a partial pass. But the second time I really had a reason. I really wanted to help other people. So, and that was because of that Slack group that was just growing as a family. I was finding it so fulfilling, and I really loved it. And then out of that, I decided I wanted to start a nonprofit to teach people how to be architects, got Lilith involved, Miriam involved. Now I've asked Emely if she would like to contribute some time to our next cohort. We literally just finished our first cohort this week. It was about 4.5 months of their lives that they just learned from CTAs, and it's not to prepare them for the review board, it's just to teach them how to become architects. So those are the ways that I'm giving back, and always looking to collaborate with others, and Lilith has ideas, and I'm like, I will support you in what you want to do, because she's always supporting me in all my ideas, so.
Yeah, and I already roped most of us in for the next, wild idea that we have, so yeah, stay tuned. But maybe Miriam, Emely, you want to?
Yeah. So for me, it's really all about being available to anybody who has questions, assisting in mocks, judging kindly, judging. How to say that? Harshly, no. Realistically. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. And then, as part of Inside Salesforce, we also have CTA programs. So also coaching some of the new to-be CTAs in that program as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, so when I passed, I signed up to the internal coaching rota of Salesforce. So then I was mentoring people inside Salesforce for passing CTAs. So I've got proudly 2 people who passed. I started mentoring you as well, but then the timing didn't work out and I was traveling a lot. So then we handed over to another coach. But yeah, so I was part of that internal program of, mocks, etc. I also volunteered with Ladies Be Architect when Gemma started it initially. Did a bunch of speaking podcasts to inspire other people, especially women, to kind of be encouraged. Because one thing I saw was when I passed, a lot of people just said, oh my God, how did you do it? I'm not technical enough to do it, or I don't feel like I should go for it. And I felt like because I had passed that barrier, it was my responsibility to dispel the myth a little bit about, well, you don't have to be a core techie, actually. It's more about having a balanced view of business technology and being able to map that. And I think having a good EQ, which I'm sorry, men in the room, but I'm not being biased, women have a lot of it, right? So for me, paying back, even now, it's not just about CTA for me. I think I've broadened my horizons since then. Like I said, I've started the Women Who Mule program, because when I took up my leadership role at MuleSoft, wow, I was the only woman at every level. Like, forget technical, even at leadership level, because the word integration scared a lot of people, right? The word integration was like, oh my God, it's an integration product. I have to be like a developer, I have to be coding in a room for 8 hours a day. It's not. So there were so many myths there to expel. But the most difficult thing, for a very selfish reason, why I started that, was I wasn't able to hire diverse talent when I was trying to grow my team. I just did not have any diverse applications at all, right? Which was the saddest part for me, that with all the best intention in the world, I can't hire people because there was no pipe of talent there. So I thought we have to go back 4 steps and try to build that pipeline for the next few years and encourage more women or just people from different backgrounds to come and try this as a career. So that was really the whole motivation around that. But I've also then started mentoring people on signed up with some charities and groups like Generating Genius, mentored someone who came from Nigeria. They didn't have any, they were the first people in their family to actually go to a university or even pass school. So for someone like them, we're a very privileged group, most of us here, who grow up knowing what to wear to an interview, who have people around to ask, well, how do I approach my first interview when I was a teenager? But just talking to my mentee there, I realized, oh my God, it's such a privilege to even have access to people who can tell you what to wear, how to approach your first interview, how to walk into an office, and what are people looking for, even when he's applying for a summer internship. So I found that whole process was very humbling for me, and it made me appreciate what I had a lot more, but it also made me appreciate. Initially, I used to think, well, what value am I adding if I'm just coaching someone for an interview, right? But it really made me appreciate that I am adding value, I am making a difference, and I should keep doing it. I'm very proud to say he's got his Google internship now, too. We were too late. I couldn't hire him into MuleSoft at that point, but he got the Google offer first, and I encouraged him to take it. But yeah, so that's kind of been my way. So I've now expanded beyond CTA and more into how do we encourage just diverse talent into tech.
Yeah, and I think there's some points that I really want to highlight in what you were just saying. And I think sharing your expertise and also sharing your experience, that part as well about failing. I had a retake. You had a failure, it doesn't always go, happy path. Well, we're all in software, so we know it's not always the happy path. So it's really, I think that's the value that I wanted to bring. So that's the first thing that I started to do, is just, I saw a lot of people asking the same questions. And it's not that I grew tired of answering, that's not the reason, although, maybe 5% is it. But I started to write these blogs where I kind of talked about, okay, so I started really silly. How did I explain the CTA to my grandparents? It's not a success story. I don't think they fully comprehend, but okay, I did try. And then a few more like that. Okay, so how did I study? Also one on where to start, because it's so daunting, and I'm kind of breaking it down a bit. And then I try to, again, expand. So for example, okay, this is all very CTA, but actually how do you just go about certifications? Because as you all know, I have a very meticulous way when it comes to certifications. So, and it's grew over time. So this is, I think I really want to, if you take away one thing, is just share your experience, because you never know who can get value out of that, who you are inspiring. Even before I became CTA, I got some messages from, women out there who said, I found it really inspirational for you to share your story. And I was like, okay, but I'm a shrimp, right? You have all these big lobsters out there, and then you're getting inspired by me. It's a bit silly. But, you never know who you're going to inspire. So please just share your successes, share your failures, because they are super valuable to anyone in the community.
And I'll say we're also stronger together. It's not a competition,
No.
but when you work together and you support each other, you become stronger and you can do more. So that's what we also found when we were studying together and working together, and just always trying to help each other.
Yeah, and then that's maybe the biggest change to my study method, pre and post CTA. Pre was really like, okay, just me in my little room, hold up. And then post is, okay, but if I'm not sharing, if I'm not, explaining, then do I really understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, same for me. I was always studying by myself, and that all changed once I started the study group.
I think I'm really not keeping an eye on the clock, so I think we have time for the last question, and hopefully still some Q&A. And unless they kick us out, we'll just keep going. So which advice do you have for aspiring female architects? And maybe Miriam?
Yeah, sure. I can be very brief. It's almost like my speciality. It might be a cultural thing. Never mind. Anyway, so my advice would be, don't think that you can't do it. If you're here, you probably have a little spark of interest.
Yeah.
Reach out. Ask for help. I'm sure everyone will be able to help you. I'll be able to help you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Ask me all the questions that you want. If you think you can do it, you probably can. And if you don't think you can do it, you probably also can.
That's really good, yeah. Emely?
One advice is probably what Miriam just said. Just give yourself a chance. And like I say, if you don't try it, you'll definitely not do it, right? So there's no harm trying. And if you feel like, oh, I'm going to fail, that's fine. By not doing, you're anyway not going to be an architect. So even if you fail, you're not going to be an architect. So what have you got to lose there? But think of it this way. I don't think it's about passing a certification, or the quality of your architecture does not depend on whether you're a CTA or not. I think it's the journey and what you learn through the journey to getting to that certification. I think the certification is a gateway, right? Yes, it gives you a piece of paper, which kind of spells out your credibility. But honestly, I've seen so many great architects who didn't go for CTA because they didn't have that time, they didn't have the personal kind of, environment. They were not at the right stage of their life, maybe, to give that sort of time commitment, but they're awesome architects. And, they go toe-to-toe with CTAs. So I'd just say, just go for it. And especially as a female, I feel we have a lot of tenacity, EQ, business sense, and stakeholder management skills, which are all key for architecture.
Maybe, because I want to jump in on something you said before. When we were talking about you want to hire diverse, but you don't maybe see the right applications coming in, and then about just doing it. I think that is really a key message, because I think all of us here have faced the vacancy, the role description, and we were like, okay, so it's a checklist, right? I have to have everything, or I shouldn't even apply. And I think that's one of the biggest myths that we should dispel.
I have done that. I can give you examples where I have taken on roles very, very reluctantly within myself, but I've told myself, well, everybody says you have to dispel imposter syndrome, so I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to try it, and I'm going to see if I'll fail, and so far, thank God, it's going okay, right? I might fail, right? And it's not that whenever I've taken on a new challenge, I've not felt those valleys of lows where I'm like, I have days where I said, why did I take this role? I had a good life, you know. But then there are days I feel, I'm like, I've learned something new. Oh my God, I would have never got this opportunity if I was in my last role.
Yeah.
So just go for it, you know, and always stretch. If you read a job description, by the way, which matches your exact skill set, that's not the right jobs, right? Go for a job description where you feel like it's interesting, but I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. And that's the right job for you to switch to.
So yeah, I'll add to that. So what I would say is don't be afraid to fail. So I was terrified of failing the review board. And what happened my first review board, I only prepared for a few months, I failed. And it was the most devastating thing I ever experienced. But because of that, I started a study group, which turned into a family, which turned into a community. I got a golden hoodie. And I've made a lot of friends along the way that I would never change the way it's happened. I mean, I'm now grateful for that failure. So some of the most amazing things can come out of failure. So I'm a good example of that.
Yeah, so I think just to maybe summarize or just bring all of this together, just go for it. Don't let yourself hold you back, right? Don't look at things like, okay, these are musts. Just look at them as challenges that you want to overcome.
Yeah, no matter what it is. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be CTA. It can be anything you want to accomplish. Just, don't underestimate yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to fail.
I'll tell you one thing, if you can just remember this one line, no one was born with the skills they use to do their job. No one, literally no one in the world. Everybody has had to learn what they do, and if one human can learn it, any other person can learn it. So that's the attitude I take. If it's something you don't know, it's not like you can't do it, it's just something you haven't learned yet.
I'm going to end on that one and see if there's any questions in the audience. And I think there's a mic somewhere. Yes, they're on their way. It's a big room. They have to walk quite a distance. So thank you so much.
Hi, I just wanted to say you have a wild idea that you want to do it for CTA next. Can I be part? I'm willing to go ahead. As you just said, I'm willing to go ahead. And I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same way. What is the idea that you want to take it to us next?
The next idea, can I, let's just jump in. Okay, sure. So this is something that is quite personal, and I'll start with something that I don't think I've even mentioned just yet. So I have a niece, and her name is Emely, and she is like, I'm getting really emotional because she is like the smallest, smartest person I know, and she proves this like every day. And what makes me really sad is that she is incredibly smart, but I don't know if the education system as I see it now will really give her the chances to explore all the options that are out there. Because for me, I never thought IT was an option. Because it wasn't really there. So that is the idea that we're working on. We're going to bring, technology to schools. We're going to see how we can bring this in a way that, small people get involved and know, what IT is, and that this is something they can do.
We're going to catch them young.
Yes.
Actually, we're working on something like that.
Well,
If there's something going on, then we can just work on that.
Perfect. Well, that's
Always
awesome.
collaborate. Like I said, just work together. You're more powerful when you're working together.
1 minute.
So
What-
thanks for that.
Hey, there is a question from Gemma. How often are you really able to implement the principles and mindset required to pass the CTA real-life project? And I would maybe add, do you really need to pass it, or can you stop a step below, because that's what you usually need?
I was just having this conversation today, and I used Gemma as an example, and I said just going through the journey creates a better architect. You develop the mindset, and the exam is really a strategy, as you know. It's a strategy that you have to follow, but if you go through the journey, you don't have to pass the exam to become a good architect.
No.
And
Yep. I couldn't
be like
agree
Gemma.
Yeah, I mean, like there's so many rock stars out there that, just they went on the journey and maybe they found along the way it wasn't fully for them.
Matt, who you
Yes.
work with, is another example.
Yeah. Yeah, and then even before I passed, I already knew I was a better, professional than I was before. Sorry.
One more then?
I think there was another part to the question, which was about how often do you implement it, the things you needed to pass the exam, and have you ever implemented something that was matching something that would have got you through the exam?
I think when you're talking about a CTA mindset, you use it every day. Every single conversation that you're having regarding the systems or regarding the design or regarding the solution, you start thinking. I started thinking in 9 domains, literally. Have I covered security, integration, governance, access, everything. So I think it trains your mind to think and pick out gaps in a certain way.
I think the question from Gemma was regarding, have you ever implemented a system that was that clean that it would have brought you through a CTA review board, or were they all not perfect?
I think there's similarities. It's not going to be a scenario exactly, but yeah, it teaches you principles and how to think about things. But yeah, there's pieces of it that get implemented.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of the things in the board, you make so many assumptions, so you would never go in that blind, right? Because we're just, you should talk to the customer if you see those gaps. I really think we're getting kicked out. So, but thank you.
Amanda's giving us dirty looks, so time to wrap it up.
You're done. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you for hosting.